The hospital ship Mercy Dawn floated peacefully through the quiet stretches of neutral space, its bright white hull shining against the blackness of the stars. It was a symbol known across the galaxy, the mark of safety, healing, and hope. Painted in red across its side was the universal sign of mercy, a promise that no matter where you came from, if you were wounded or sick, Mercy Dawn would welcome you without judgment. Inside the ship, humans and aliens worked side by side, treating the broken victims of countless wars. The corridors echoed with quiet voices, medical monitors, and the soft beeping of life support systems. Children from different planets laughed together in the recovery rooms, and old warriors from distant worlds found peace at last within its walls. No one, not even the most savage warlords, had ever dared touch a hospital ship. It was a rule unspoken yet understood: you do not harm those who heal. That rule shattered on a cold and silent night when the Mercy Dawn entered the shadow of a barren star system, seeking to resupply. Without warning, the blackness of space twisted and tore open, revealing a fleet of alien ships that carried no banners of peace, only weapons of death. At first, the crew thought it was a mistake, maybe a malfunction or a desperate group seeking medical help, but that hope died the moment the first blast hit. Shields designed only to protect against space debris crumbled under heavy weapons fire. The engines groaned, the walls shook, and the peaceful halls turned into chaos. Doctors and nurses tried to shield their patients, rushing to evacuate the most vulnerable, but there was nowhere to run. The attackers showed no mercy, targeting life support systems first, then the escape pods, one by one. The captain of the Mercy Dawn, an old human named Elias Rowan, sent out a final distress signal, knowing full well no help could arrive in time. His voice was calm, almost sorrowful, as he said the ship's last words: "We carry only the wounded and the healers. We beg you have mercy." But there was no answer, only fire. In the final moments, the crew huddled with their patients, refusing to leave them, choosing to die as they had lived together. When the ship finally broke apart, its debris scattered silently into the void, carrying with it the dreams of 1,000 souls who had only wanted peace. Back on Earth, the news spread faster than light itself. At first, people refused to believe it. A hospital ship destroyed? It was unthinkable. Vigils were held in every city. Candles burned for days and nights without end. The names of the lost were read aloud, not just humans, but aliens too, friends and strangers alike. The world mourned, but beneath the tears, a darker emotion began to rise: rage. Pure, cold, and unrelenting rage. The leaders of Earth gathered in secret meetings, their faces pale and grim. In the old days, humans might have debated, pleaded, or negotiated. But not this time. No more warnings. No more second chances. The destruction of the Mercy Dawn was not seen as an act of war. It was an act of evil. An attack against everything humanity stood for. Across every colony and station, Earth's people spoke with one voice. A voice filled not with sadness, but with fury. This will not go unanswered. Somewhere deep in Earth's military command, a hidden program was activated, something kept locked away for emergencies too terrible to imagine. A ship, unlike any other, began to wake. Its engines roared to life. Its weapons systems hummed with deadly energy. Its name was whispered with awe and fear: the Vindicator. And it carried with it a single mission, written not in orders, but in the hearts of every human who had lost someone on the Mercy Dawn: find the ones responsible and make them pay. The galaxy, still reeling from the horror of the destroyed hospital ship, would soon learn a new lesson about humanity. A lesson written not in treaties or speeches, but in fire and iron. A lesson that mercy is humanity's gift, but vengeance is humanity's answer to betrayal. The moment the last piece of the hospital ship, Mercy Dawn, vanished into the cold dark of space, something ancient and dangerous awoke inside the heart of humanity, something that had been quiet for centuries, but had never truly died, and now it demanded action. Across Earth's military networks, silent alarms were triggered, red lights flashing in hidden rooms deep beneath the surface, where no sunlight had ever touched. Generals spoke in cold, clipped voices, Faces grim, with the knowledge that diplomacy had ended the second innocent blood floated across the stars. There would be no press conferences, no messages of sorrow sent to alien governments begging for peace. Humanity had tried peace, had believed in it, had fought wars to protect it, but peace had been spat on the day Mercy Dawn was destroyed, and now humanity would show the galaxy the other side of its soul. In a top-secret hangar hidden beneath the frozen ice of Antarctica, a massive ship began to stir. A ship built not for defense, not for rescue, but for vengeance. Its black hull seemed to swallow the light around it, its armor made of alloys no enemy had ever seen before, designed to survive the unthinkable. It had no diplomatic flags, no rescue signals, no symbols of hope, only a name etched deep into its armored skin, the Vindicator. Captain Alora Briggs stood at the head of the crew, a figure of unwavering willpower, her eyes sharp as frozen steel, a woman who had seen too much war to believe in the kindness of enemies. She had been chosen not because she loved war, but because she understood it in ways few ever could. She knew when to show mercy and when to erase the enemy so thoroughly that history itself would struggle to remember them. As the Vindicator roared to life, its massive engines sending tremors through the frozen earth, the crew moved with silent precision, all volunteers, all carrying the same fire in their hearts. They would not return until the killers of Mercy Dawn had been found and destroyed. Intelligence agents worked day and night, piecing together fragments of sensor data, intercepted transmissions, and half-whispered rumors from the shadowy corners of the galaxy, chasing every lead, no matter how small. And in the middle of it all, Captain Briggs sat in her command chair, studying the maps of star systems and enemy movements, her mind racing faster than any ship. The search led them into the lawless regions beyond the borders of civilized space, places where pirates, slavers, and warlords ruled, places where a hospital ship would have been seen not as sacred but as prey. Suspicion slowly hardened into certainty the Vrakkar Dominion, a brutal pirate empire that had long operated beyond the reach of law, had been responsible. These creatures believed mercy was weakness, that compassion was an opportunity for exploitation, and when they saw the unarmed Mercy Dawn drifting through neutral space, they had pounced without hesitation. But what the Vrakkar failed to understand was that Earth's mercy was a choice, not a weakness, and once that choice was betrayed, there would be no second chance. Captain Briggs ordered a direct course plotted to the heart of Vrakkar territory. No stealth, no secrecy. She wanted them to see the Vindicator coming, wanted the fear to grow in their hearts with every passing second. As the ship moved like a silent predator through the empty void, human ships on the outer edges of the galaxy fell into line behind it, old warships, fast frigates, stealth bombers, veterans who needed no orders to understand what must be done. Words spread through the stars faster than the speed of light. Earth was coming, and it was not coming to negotiate. The Vrakkar, at first, laughed, boasting that they would destroy any fleet sent against them just as easily as they had destroyed the helpless hospital ship. But when the first Vrakkar raiding parties encountered human scout ships and found themselves utterly annihilated within minutes, the laughter faded. When stealth satellites placed along the Vrakkar trade routes vanished without a trace, their panic grew. They sent out desperate messages to their allies, begging for reinforcements, offering rewards for mercenaries brave enough to face the human wrath. Few answered, and those who did regretted it. Captain Briggs gave no speeches to her crew, no long monologues about honor or revenge. She simply showed them the last transmission from Mercy Dawn, played at once, the sorrowful voice of Captain Elias Rowan asking for mercy that never came. That was all they needed. Silence fell over the ship as everyone steeled themselves for what was to come. The Vindicator dropped out of hyperspace on the edge of a dying star system, the home base of the Vrakkar Dominion, a place once teeming with ships and life, now strangely quiet. The crew watched the enemy on the scanners, saw the defensive positions, the fleets desperately trying to regroup, and they smiled grimly. Captain Briggs stood and gave the only order that mattered: end them. The hunt had begun, not in anger born of fear, but in rage forged by loss, a cold and unstoppable fury that nothing in the galaxy could withstand. The Vrakkar had thought they understood violence. They had no idea what true human rage looked like, but they were about to learn, and they would not live to forget. As the Vindicator moved deeper into Vracker space, the darkness around them seemed heavier, like even the stars themselves refused to shine upon this cursed part of the galaxy. And though the ship's scanners picked up countless signals, none came close, as if the enemy feared being seen, feared being noticed by the cold fury now hunting them. Captain Alora Briggs sat in silence, her sharp eyes studying the endless streams of data scrolling before her, piecing together a puzzle whose full picture was still hidden. And it was then, in the quiet moments between battles, that the first true clues about the real enemy began to appear. The Vrakkar had always been brutal pirates, but something about their recent attacks, including the destruction of Mercy Dawn, felt different, more organized, more merciless than even their savage ways could explain. And when intelligence teams cracked into stolen Vrakkar databases, the truth began to bleed out like a slow poison. The Vrakkar were not acting alone. Behind them, hidden like a spider in the center of a vast web, was another force, one that Earth had never directly encountered before: the Exelrin Syndicate, a secretive and ancient race known only through scattered whispers and ancient warnings found on long-dead worlds, a species that had mastered not just war but the art of manipulation, turning others into weapons without ever exposing themselves. Captain Briggs felt the weight of this revelation settle in her chest like a stone, understanding that the real enemy was not the barbaric Vrakkar ships surrounding them, but the unseen hands that had set this war in motion, hands that would retreat into the shadows once the blood was spilled and the damage was done. She gathered her senior officers in the command chamber, their faces grim as she explained the deeper truth, knowing that if they only crushed the Vrakkar, they would leave the true enemy untouched, free to strike again. The crew, hardened by years of service, accepted this bitter knowledge without fear. They would fight the Vrakkar because they must. But their real mission was now clear: find the Exelrin and drag them into the light. The battle plans shifted subtly, not just seeking victory but seeking evidence, pieces of the puzzle that would lead them back to the real monsters lurking in the dark. Every Vrakkar ship that surrendered was not destroyed immediately. Instead, boarding parties stormed the vessels, hunting for data cores, prisoner logs, anything that could reveal the hidden masters pulling the strings. It was a dangerous move, giving the enemy a chance to strike back during boarding actions, but humanity had decided that no risk was too great, not when the stakes were this high. One of the captured Vrakkar commanders, a scarred and broken creature named Sorik, cracked under interrogation, not from pain the humans refused to torture, but from a careful mixture of silence, patience, and cold logic that broke his spirit faster than any blade. Sorik revealed that the Exelrin had offered the Vrakkar power, technology, and untold riches in exchange for chaos, telling them to target ships of mercy and peace, knowing it would provoke humanity's rage and spark a war that would bleed both sides dry, leaving the Exelrin untouched and ready to swoop in to claim the ruins. Captain Briggs listened to this confession with a growing storm in her heart, feeling the rage harden into something sharper, more dangerous. This was not just about revenge anymore. This was about survival, about preventing a future where Earth's children would live as slaves beneath a hidden enemy's claws. The Vindicator turned its course again, heading toward a hidden base Sorik revealed, a secret Vrakkar fortress built deep into an asteroid field, a place where Exelrin agents were rumored to operate from the shadows. And as they approached, the crew prepared not just for a battle but for a reckoning. The asteroid field was a nightmare, a swirling dance of death where even the smallest miscalculation could tear a ship apart. But the human pilots, trained in the brutal simulations of Earth's defense academies, moved through the deadly rocks with terrifying precision, their ships slipping through narrow gaps that would have shattered lesser crews. The Vrakkar defenders, desperate and panicking, launched ambush after ambush, but the Vindicator and its escort fleet tore through them like a hurricane. The cold fury of humanity focused into every missile, every laser blast, every boarding action. Inside the fortress, the crew found evidence too clear to ignore: strange symbols etched into walls, technology too advanced for the Vrakkar, communications equipment designed to send encrypted messages across impossible distances, all pointing back to the hidden hand of the Exelrin. But there was no time to celebrate the discovery, for the Exelrin had anticipated the possibility of exposure, and as the fortress's reactors began to overload, the entire asteroid base prepared to self-destruct, burying its secrets beneath a mountain of debris. Captain Briggs refused to let the truth die so easily. She ordered her best infiltration teams to dive into the burning core, racing against time, against collapsing corridors and walls of fire, to pull what evidence they could. Minutes stretched into eternity, but finally, the teams returned, battered, scorched but alive, carrying data cores filled with damning information, maps, plans, and even partial recordings of Exoran operatives giving orders. As the fortress behind them exploded into a massive fireball, lighting up the dead asteroid field like a second sun, the Vindicator turned away, carrying with it the truth that could not be buried. Now, the enemy was no longer hidden, no longer safe behind shadows and pawns. The Exoran had been revealed to humanity, and Earth's fury, once scattered and seeking a target, now had a name to carve into the stars. Captain Briggs stood on the bridge, staring out at the burning remains of the fortress, her voice low but filled with a promise that every soul aboard felt deep in their bones. Now we hunt the real enemy. And somewhere, deep in the dark places of the galaxy, the Exoran who had thought themselves safe began to realize they had made the greatest mistake of their existence. The revelation of the true enemy set the fire of war blazing hotter than ever before, and as the Vindicator returned to Earth's fleet with the stolen data cores, every soldier, every pilot, every technician felt the same cold fury burning inside them, a fury that refused to be satisfied with anything less than the total destruction of the Exoran Syndicate. No more holding back. No more hunting shadows now. It was time for the hammer of humanity to fall with full force. And as the fleet grew, warships pouring in from Earth and her colonies, the space around the staging grounds crackled with energy and purpose. Captain Alara Briggs, standing before the assembled commanders, spoke words that needed no shouting, her voice calm and sharp as steel, carrying across the massive hall with the weight of righteous fury, reminding them all why they fought, not for revenge alone, but for justice, for every life taken, for every innocent soul lost in the void because of hidden greed and cruelty. Their target was clear: a major Exoran outpost discovered through the captured files, a fortress disguised as a neutral trade hub on the edge of the Corrales Rift, protected by lies, bribery, and layers of stolen technology. But the humans no longer cared for politics or excuses. As the fleet warped through the deep blackness toward the enemy, the tension on every ship was a living thing, electric and fierce. But it was not fear that gripped them, it was hunger, the need to strike, to tear apart the ones who had hidden behind others and thought themselves untouchable. The battle began the moment they dropped out of warp, the Exoran defenses reacting with shocking speed, swarms of automated drones and mercenary ships flooding space like angry hornets. But the humans came prepared for total war. Wave after wave of fighters launched from carriers, weaving and slashing through enemy lines, their missiles and railguns ripping holes in the Exoran formations, while the heavy warships like the Vindicator and Resolute Dawn moved forward like ancient gods of destruction, ignoring the smaller threats and pounding the enemy fortifications with devastating firepower. The space around the Exoran station turned into a raging inferno, debris from shattered ships spinning wildly as both sides fought with savage desperation. But where the Exoran forces hesitated, relying on shields and automated tactics, the humans pressed forward with the reckless bravery that had always been their greatest strength. Soldiers boarding enemy vessels, storming outer platforms, planting demolition charges with brutal efficiency. Captain Briggs led the assault personally, her armor gleaming in the red emergency lights of the breach station, moving with deadly precision through corridors filled with desperate defenders, her team cutting down resistance with swift, lethal strikes. Every corner of the station screamed with alarms, smoke and fire choking the once proud halls. But still the humans advanced, unstoppable, like a tidal wave of vengeance that could not be turned aside. In the central command tower, they found the Exoran overseers, tall, cold-eyed beings with skin like polished stone and voices like broken glass, and for a moment, the two sides stared at each other across the ruined chamber, the silence heavier than any weapon. The Exoran had always believed themselves superior, untouchable behind layers of lies and pawns. But now they saw the truth in the hard eyes of the humans before them. No fear, no hesitation, only the absolute certainty that the end had come. The battle was short and brutal. The Exelrin commanders were either captured or killed, their secrets torn from data cores and shattered defenses. As the humans withdrew, dragging prisoners and stolen intelligence behind them, they left the station to its fate, detonating planted charges that tore the massive structure apart in a series of blinding explosions, the wreckage tumbling into the rift like ashes on a cold wind. But Earth's fury was not finished. This was only the beginning, and the campaign that followed was a nightmare for the Exelrin, a whirlwind of attacks that smashed their hidden outposts, burned their supply lines, shattered their alliances, and exposed their crimes to the wider galaxy. Worlds that had once been cowed by Exelrin threats now rose in rebellion, inspired by humanity's unstoppable assault, and the Syndicate's network, built over centuries of careful manipulation, crumbled faster than anyone could have imagined. Captain Briggs and her fleet became a symbol of vengeance, a name that the Exelrin whispered in terror across their remaining strongholds, and even as they tried to regroup, tried to strike back with ambushes and traps, they found themselves outmatched at every turn. Humanity fought like a species that had remembered every wound, every loss, and now returned each one 100-fold, their tactics unpredictable, their will unbreakable, their technology evolving faster than the Exelrin could adapt. There were no negotiations, no mercy, only battle after battle, and in each one, Earth's message was clear. You cannot hide, you cannot escape, and you will pay for every crime committed under the shadow of your lies. Across burning skies and shattered moons, from the darkest asteroid fields to the storm-racked oceans of dying planets, the war raged, a storm of fire and steel that reshaped the map of the stars. And at the heart of it all, Captain Briggs remained a constant figure, her fury never wavering, her heart hardened by the memory of Mercy Dawn and the countless innocents lost. She understood now that true evil wore many faces, sometimes a screaming pirate, sometimes a smiling diplomat, but no matter how it hid, it could be hunted, exposed, and destroyed. As the fleet prepared for the final strike against the Exelrin's last known stronghold, hidden deep within a shattered world known only as Oblivion's crown, Captain Briggs stood once more before her crew, her voice steady and strong, and told them what they already knew in their hearts. This was not just vengeance anymore, not just justice. This was a warning to any who would ever again think to prey upon the innocent. The wrath of humanity had been unleashed, and it would not rest until every last shadow of the Exelrin Syndicate had been wiped clean from the stars, until the galaxy itself remembered forever what it meant to provoke the fury of Earth. The final battle had ended in fire and silence, with the Exelrin Syndicate shattered beyond any hope of recovery, their leaders dead or captured, their hidden strongholds turned into dust among the stars. But even as the debris of the last fight drifted cold through space, Captain Alara Briggs knew that the true work was only just beginning. The galaxy had watched in stunned silence as Earth's fury tore through the Syndicate, a force so swift and unstoppable that many governments and species had not even dared to breathe a word of protest, fearing that they might be the next to feel the storm if they stood in the way. Now, in the smoking aftermath, questions filled every corner of the known systems. Who were the humans, really? What had awakened such wrath, and what would they do now that their enemies were broken? Alara understood that silence would only breed more fear, and while fear could be a useful weapon, it was not the future humanity wanted to build. They had fought not to become new tyrants, but to ensure that no hospital ship, no helpless colony, no peaceful outpost would ever again be sacrificed to greed and darkness while the galaxy looked away. That was why, as the fleet gathered around the newly captured Exelrin broadcast array, hidden within the shattered world of Oblivion's crown, Alara stood once again at the center, preparing to speak not with weapons, but with words that would burn into the hearts of every living being across 1,000 systems. The technicians worked quickly, bypassing ancient encryption and sabotage attempts, while soldiers patrolled the ruins with watchful eyes, ensuring that no last desperate ambush would ruin this moment. When the signal light blinked green, Alara stepped forward onto the platform, the cameras capturing her plain armor, scorched and dented from battle, the simple Earth emblem on her shoulder shining brighter than any metal. There was no grand speech, no practiced theatrics, just the truth spoken in a voice that was cold as iron, and yet burning with a deep, endless fire. She told them how the syndicate had hidden behind diplomacy while murdering innocents, how they had struck a hospital ship filled with the wounded and the dying, believing no one would fight back. She told them how humanity had answered not with more lies, but with action, sweeping through the darkness and tearing the evil out by its roots. She warned them that Earth had no interest in conquest, no desire for thrones or tribute, but she promised that if any power, no matter how old or rich or hidden, ever dared again to target the helpless, humanity would rise once more, and when it did, there would be no corner of the galaxy dark enough to hide in, no fortress strong enough to withstand the storm. Her words echoed across systems in every language, broadcast into homes, into councils, into war rooms, and marketplaces, reaching the ears of rulers and rebels alike. And in the silence that followed, the message carved itself deep into the soul of the galaxy. Earth had spoken, and Earth would be silent no more. The response was not immediate, but it was powerful. Some planets sent messages of thanks. Others sent offers of alliances. Treaties formed faster than ever before as old enemies realized that survival now meant standing together under a new kind of order, one that demanded justice over power. Some tried to protest, to paint humanity as dangerous. But their words fell flat when weighed against the mountain of evidence: the wreckage of syndicate fleets, the freed slaves, the broken chains, the liberated worlds where children could now walk without fear. The very name of Earth became something new in the galaxy, no longer whispered with suspicion, but spoken with awe and a cautious, growing respect. On Earth itself, and in the scattered colonies that had always dreamed of being more than just survivors among the stars, the feeling was even stronger. Humanity, once fractured and struggling, found unity in the fire they had unleashed, their pride not in conquest, but in standing for something greater. Science, exploration, defense, all were fueled by a new purpose, driven by the understanding that with strength came responsibility, and that they could never again turn their eyes away when injustice rose its head. Captain Briggs, hailed as a hero, refused titles and honors, remaining at the head of the fleet she had led through fire and death, believing that leadership meant service, not glory. Her crew, battle-hardened and fiercely loyal, continued to train, knowing that while the syndicate had fallen, the darkness that birthed such evils would always exist somewhere beyond the edge of known space. They did not seek war, but they prepared for it, because peace was something that had to be guarded, not wished for. Among the ruins of Oblivion's crown, the humans built a beacon, not a weapon, but a memorial, a living reminder to all who passed by. It bore the names of every life lost aboard Mercy Dawn and countless others, engraved into a massive pillar of alloy and stone, standing under the broken sky. The inscription was simple: we remember. We protect. We stand. Pilgrims began to come, not just humans, but beings from 100 worlds, paying respect to the fallen and finding in the silence a shared understanding of the cost of looking away from evil. New alliances were born there, among the cold rocks and eternal winds, and slowly the galaxy began to heal, not perfectly, not without struggle, but with a hope stronger than before. Yet Alara knew better than to believe in easy endings. She knew that somewhere, in the distant shadows of the galaxy, new threats were already growing, new tyrants dreaming of power, and that someday the call would come again. But she also knew that this time, humanity would not be underestimated, would not be isolated or ignored. Their message was clear, burned into the stars. Earth was watching, Earth was ready, and Earth would never allow the darkness to rise unchecked again. As she stood at the edge of the command deck, staring out at the swirling stars beyond, Captain Briggs allowed herself a rare smile, not of triumph, but of determination, because she knew that the future, for the first time in a long, long while, belonged not to fear or greed, but to those brave enough to stand against them. And with that silent promise, humanity moved forward, leaving behind a legacy that would echo across the ages, a new force among the stars, bound not by conquest, but by the unbreakable vow that no innocent life would ever again be left undefended, no cry for help ever again ignored. The galaxy had been given its warning, and the memory of Earth's fury would never be forgotten.